Hustle over everything. Graham, take one.
I have the CEO of LAUFT here with me. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Getting the $13 million contract with the government. You know.
Yeah, we'll say 13. It's 12 plus HST, but let's count the HST.
Okay,
yeah.
All right, cool.
13. 3 to 6 months straight of just responding to that RFP. They reached out to some of our competitors. You know, you talked about WeWork, Regis. We were lucky enough to win it.
That's huge. So when the government pays out like that, do they give tranches, or is it like you get this whole windfall check?
Our very first investor, I had put the LAUFT pitch deck together for her, and said, hey, listen, I want to talk to you about something. Pitched it to him, and he said, I'm in. I believe that LAUFT is the future of how people will work.
Your overall mind state when you get such a windfall, does your mind state change per se?
You know, towards the first half of this year, to sort of recalibrate and say, well, listen, like all of this means nothing if I'm not valuing.
Hello and welcome back to Hustle Over Everything. I'm your host and owner of the show, Alex Whitfield. Today, we're talking about retail spaces, workspaces, because I have the CEO of LAUFT here with me. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm happy, bro. I'm happy to have you in the show. All right, so to kick things off, I want to start off with your reaction to WeWork shutting down. How did that affect you? What was your thought process?
Well, the polite thing would be to say it's a shame because you don't want to lose anyone in the industry. Part of it would be, the other side of it would be, you know, I saw it like happening. The way the space was moving from a commercial real estate standpoint, companies were coming out of the pandemic. They were saying, you know, hey, we don't need as much space. It was going to be challenging for companies, landlords on a whole, but even in the co-working space, it was going to be challenging. Mm-hmm. So
that makes sense. Now let's take a step back. You know, I'm Jamaican, and one phrase we always have is the word brought-upsy.
Yes.
You know, so for people who don't know you, what's your brought-upsy?
Okay. From a how you behave, how you carry yourself in the world.
Yeah.
So absolutely. That word came up earlier today, by the way. I was down at one of our locations, and
really,
you know, there were some elder Caribbean women there, and we were talking, and they had made a comment. And I said, well, listen, I have the brought-upsy. Like I had it. Mm-hmm. You know, my mom taught me to respect people, carry and walk with my values. And so how you carry yourself in the world is important.
Mm-hmm. Tell me more about your background. You know, I want to make sure the audience gets a full understanding of you. You know, so before you were doing LAUFT, what were you into?
Before I was doing LAUFT, I was consulting in advertising. Before that, I ran my own ad agency for 13 years. And before that, I had a hip-hop clothing store in downtown Toronto.
Get out of here.
So this is my third entrepreneurial journey.
Okay, so what have you learned from LAUFT that you could apply to those other businesses? Because for me, I have other businesses as well that I moved on from. And now that I'm here, there's so much I've learned that I would apply to those businesses to make them successful. What are some easy lessons that you've learned that I'm like, oh man, if I had known this back then, it could have easily blossomed more?
So you're 100% correct. I think you have these experiences and you say, if I had applied this back then, but I wouldn't, because I don't think I would have come to the realization of the things that make sense today, then it wouldn't have worked. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So maybe you could say things like, have a great accountant, have a great lawyer, make sure that everyone that's involved in the business has a distinct role and they understand what they're bringing to the table, and the accountability has to be there. All of those things are very real. But if I didn't go through those experiences, I don't think I wouldn't be here today.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, one thing that really impressed me about LAUFT is the amount of locations you have, your story about getting the $13 million contract with the government.
Yeah, we'll say 13. It's 12 plus HST, but let's count the HST.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right, cool.
13. You're right.
One thing I definitely want to highlight, because there's a lot of people here, we want to learn how to get government contracts. Personally, I continuously hear grants out of everybody's mouth. Grants is like the second language here in Toronto.
Right.
I want to get to that in a moment. I just want to make sure everybody knows that's one of the things we're going to be talking about. Before that, let's walk into starting LAUFT, because LAUFT is a very inspiring business that you've been able to create. Talk to us about the inceptions of LAUFT.
So when I was consulting, there were two things that really, I guess, manifested LAUFT.
Yeah.
The first thing was I was consulting. And so when you're consulting, you line up your clients and you'll have meetings. Now, living in Toronto, I might say have a meeting at 9 a.m. in the morning and one at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And so what inevitably happens is, if anyone who lives in the GTA and around, you'll sort of say, okay, well, how will I plan my day? If this meeting runs long, will I make that meeting after? And sometimes what happens is you go to your 9 a.m. downtown Toronto and you're trying to go to Oakville for 1 o'clock, and your meeting ends right on time. You head out to Oakville and you're there like 2 hours early. And so you say, okay, well, what am I going to do? Where am I going to work? I need to check in with the office. And so you'll go and find a Starbucks, or you'll go to a hotel lobby, or you'll work out of your car. So that was moment one, where I said, this doesn't make sense that we don't have professional convenient space in between an office and your home. So why isn't that in the market? The second thing was obviously things like Uber and Netflix. So things on demand came out. And so if you sort of bring those two things together, you realize that could you create something that was flexible and on demand and worked for consultants, worked for freelancers, worked for businesses? And that's where it came out. The next thing that really sort of sparked it, I was doing some consulting in downtown Toronto. And if anyone knows, there's a building called, it's a condominium called Aura, and it's at Gerrard and Yonge. Mm-hmm. And they had marketed it as one of the tallest condos in Toronto. And below it, they had built out these retail spaces like Pacific Mall. They were small units that were 50 to 100 square feet. And they sold them to retailers and said, hey, we're going to create a little mall under this condo. It's going to be connected to the path, and you'll have all this traffic. But that didn't happen. They didn't connect to the path. But they sold the condos, but they also sold these retail units. And so there were, one day I was we were consulting, and I walked into that mall and I saw empty units, and they were the size of an office, right? And some of the landlords or some of the owners were advertising that take the unit for free. We'll just pay our TMI.
What's TMI?
The maintenance cost, right? Okay. So they said, we won't charge you rent. We'll just, TMI. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, well, these would be great offices. Like, these could be. And maybe these landlords will want, or these owners will want to do a deal. Like, they'll say, instead of you coming in as a tenant, if I'm already doing this, we'll do revenue share. So the concept of LAUFT and creating these convenient spaces actually came about because of economic situation for some people, and also the fact that I thought there needed to be a third place. Mm. We didn't do any deals with those people in the building, but we did end up doing similar deals where we were doing, we weren't going in as a tenant, we were going in as a partner to activate space that was underutilized. So it's just the way life went or comes together. Mm. And that's our story. That's how we started.
Wow. All right. That's fascinating, because Toronto landlords are known to be horrific. Is that
they're about their business?
They're about their business.
Yeah, let's just say that.
But sure. How was it when you first launched it? Did you have to have like a marketing campaign in place? What was the overall reception when you first launched LAUFT?
So again, I think in life, sometimes you get lucky, right? I think there was this trend where retail was moving in the wrong direction. E-commerce was starting to eat retail, like bricks and mortar.
For sure.
And so you had landlords that were sitting on space and it was underutilized. And they were looking for ways to not have a dead area, right? And so I believe that we were this solution that just came along. And if you really think about the retail journey, we started in shopping malls. When you go to a shopping mall, it was very transactional. You'd go there, you'd go and buy something, you'd leave the mall. What we've seen in shopping malls, because they need to improve the experiences, you're seeing them add restaurants, like many restaurants, not just the food court. They're adding real restaurants. They're adding experiences on site. And so what we were able to do and what we were able to demonstrate is that if you think about the journey at a shopping mall, you have people buying stuff, you have people eating, people going to see movies. What you didn't have was people working. And so our concept was to take underutilized space, create this work environment. And the journey we painted for the landlord was, if you really think about it, imagine a family coming to the mall. Someone could shop, someone can go, grab some, someone could shop, someone could work, get together and go and eat, go and see a movie. And so I think what happens is, as an entrepreneur, if you can understand what problem you're solving, then you really are able to deliver something pretty unique. And that's what we were able to do.
I get it. That was really smart about the open area of having work in malls. I've never thought about that. I'm curious, seeing that you have so much retail experience, what's your thoughts on the Bay closing?
I think it's a shame. I think, it is, the Bay was part of Canada, the founding of Canada, for good and for bad, right? Yeah. Obviously with the history. But I think whenever you have, something that's as traditional as that fail, it's unfortunate. I think it's also a lesson for businesses and retailers to look at this and say, what is the market today? What makes sense? And I think that in many cases, businesses can become disconnected from the environment and the reality of the day. And I think that's what you saw. And that's what happened with the Bay. I
think so. I completely agree with you. I also think there's a notion of foreign investment because the Bay was acquired by an American company,
yes.
Around like the 2010s.
Couple times, right?
Yeah, a couple times. Yeah. And I realized that I think they didn't have the mindset to change the Bay for the modern times. It looked like they were more so focused on the real estate versus the actual company.
Right, and that's a big part of the Bay business is the real estate more than the actual business itself. Some of the deals that they were able to do with shopping malls to sort of anchor it, like what a shopping mall represented back in the day, where, you had to have the Bay be the anchor, or you had to, back in the day would have been Eaton's, it would have been Zellers. I'm showing my age, right?
Yeah.
But that's changed, right?
Yeah.
The landscape for customers and the brands that they're loyal to, that's changed.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. I think we're stepping into a completely new age of retail, especially with how we're adapting to virtual work-life balances. Having LAUFTs and experiences in retail make it a whole new experience. Like, for example, at Pickering Town Center, now there's pickleball in the mall. In Bowmanville, there's a Volt Raceway in the mall.
Yes.
And so I'm like, wow, this is like a whole new way of living, Going back into LAUFT story, right? How were you able to grow it? Was it the investment that was like the lead in growth for?
No. I would say we've been blessed to have some solid investors who believe in the vision and who have been with us since as early as 2018. So, absolutely. But I think what probably drove, and we had some really great growth, was we had these really great opportunities that fell into our lap, like to get locations. And then also there was a passion and a drive on our team to do it at all costs. So look, I remember days of, working 20, 22 hours straight, for 3 days, to get Vaughn up and running, right?
Wow.
With my team, where we were putting the walls up ourselves, or we were printing the vinyl graphics ourselves so that we could do it. So I think sometimes what happens is we just went with the opportunity to get a space, and in our mindset, we were doing it, and it didn't matter how we did it, how we had to juggle and pull funds together. We just plowed forward, right? And I think that's part of the entrepreneurial journey. Yeah, that's so not necessarily investment. We just did it.
Wow. What's been the biggest challenge running so many different locations? And I would love to dive deeper into the Vaughn opening. What were some of the biggest challenges you had there?
Staff. I mean, building a team that could manage it. One thing that we realized is once you open a location, it's open. I mean, I think you mentioned this earlier. Like once you put an episode out, you got to keep putting it out. You got to keep feeding the beast, right? And so once you say we're open on, I think in Vaughan, we opened on December 8th of 2019. So 4 months before the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
You're open every day, and the mall is open 7 days a week, and it's open 12 hours a day. And, you don't realize sometimes that, does that make sense for your business, right? When are your peak times? So we learned a lot. And it's always challenging to figure out operationally how you manage in the most efficient way possible. But it's been great. It's been a great journey.
How many members are on your team right now?
We are, oh my gosh, Jesse would know this better than I would. He's my CEO and obviously employee number one. He was amazing. I think we're 15. I think we just added 2 people for the Gatineau location. So maybe we're 15, 16 full time. Yeah.
How are you? Do you have a strategy for hiring and for leadership?
So we have what we've built, and this is because we came coming from advertising background, is you build brands. And so we have a value system, like our core values, and those core values pretty well drive how we bring people in, because you can have the skill set, and the skill set is important, right? But you have to make sure that we're all aligned in how we want to conduct ourselves, how we want to show up, what our values are going to be, so that when things aren't great, you can lean in on those values. So
interesting. Okay. How do you know when it's time to fire someone versus it's just a systems issue?
So systems issue, you mean if it's just a skill set or like a gap in performance, like being able to do the role or fulfill the role, or
like the person just isn't meant for it? Exactly.
Yeah. So in the past, we've probably experienced situations where, the old saying, you hire slow, fire fast.
Yeah.
Right? And I think generally that makes a lot of sense, because if you hire slow, it's because you've aligned on, okay, this is going to be a good fit. Our values align, the work ethic aligns, the skill set aligns. And then if it doesn't, you fire fast, because it has nothing to do with anything but it just isn't the right fit. And you can feel good about that. You can be at peace when it's not the right fit. If it's a skill set or a gap where possibly you haven't delivered the resources for them to be able to succeed, or you haven't done your part, that becomes hard. And I think sometimes in entrepreneurship, you can bring really great people to the table, but you're also aware of where in the areas that you have fallen short or not filled the gap. And so you give the blind, you say, well, I don't know. We didn't have the resources for you to do your job well. So, and then that just drags it out. And that's not necessarily respectful for yourself, but certainly not respectful for the other person. Right. So to answer your question, I think that old adage, hire slow, fire fast, makes sense. And I think we learned that over time. We have a great team now, an incredible team.
Most definitely. All right. So let's get into the money.
Get into the money.
Yeah. Talk to us about this contract that you got with the government. This podcast is brought to you by Whitmedia Studios. When it comes to recording your own podcast, you need a team. Don't just settle for using one camera. You need a multiple camera setup so you can have the options of cutting and leveraging it to the best of your ability. Now, with Whitmedia Studios, you have state-of-the-art Cinema 6K cameras as well as state-of-the-art audio equipment with a sound-treated room. Why not go for the best and compete at a high level? If you're interested in launching your own podcast or doing your own content, you can hit us in the link below at whitmedia.ca, or you can email me directly at alex@whitmedia.ca. All right, let's get into the show.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, another incredible milestone for us. We started by taking part in a RFI, which is a request for information with the government. This is coming out of the pandemic. The government had already been looking at their spaces, had already been looking at the way the employees were working, and saying that they wanted a flexible, innovative way to manage their teams. They reached out to some of our competitors. You know, you talked about WeWork, Regis. I think they were all part of the RFI, and we were as well. But because of our approach to co-working, I think we were able to bring something to the table that hadn't been done before. While a lot of the other co-working spaces were large office models, we were these small, nimble touch points. And I think that resonates not only with our clients now, but the government saw it as something very unique. When the RFP came out, they actually were looking for innovation. They were looking for, the checklist that was very aligned with what we did. And so we responded to the RFP. It was a long process, and we were lucky enough to win it. And it was officially announced on September the 22nd of 2020. September the 21st of 2022. We just opened the first location on March 3rd of 2025.
Wow.
So it has not been a quick journey. We were talking about that earlier. It has been a journey though. So, and it's incredible. I mean, it's like I said, you said 13 million, it's 12 million plus HST.
Yeah.
Definitely moves the needle for us in a way that, we could only dream of. And it's an amazing achievement.
100%. Okay. How did you first get wind of that? Did they reach out to you?
Let me think back on this. So our very first investor, Dean Hanish, that's his name. I'm going to put it out there because he was the very first one that I had put the LAUFT pitch deck together for, and said, "Hey, listen, I want to talk to you about something." Pitched it to him, and he said, "I'm in."
Wow.
So I mean, give him credit where credit's due.
Shout out to Dean.
100%, and that's how we were able to start our pilot location in 2017.
How much do you invest? Are you able to say how much you invested for?
I'd prefer not to.
That's fine.
But let's just say that, you know what, like for someone to take that shot with just an idea at that time,
so you had nothing at that moment.
I had a deck. I had a deck, and I said, "Listen, I wanna. This is what I think. I think we can have the Starbucks of workspace with an Uber-like experience."
Wow.
That was the concept, and that's been refined over the years. What he invested in is, he said, basically, we had done some other work together, and he said, "Well, I'm in because this is Like, this is us. Let's go.
Yeah.
And he also said, I hate this business. It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of effort, and it's a lot of work. But he still did it. So shout out to Dean. To answer your question, where we found out about the government. So looping back, I just wanted to give Dean his flowers. Dean lives in Ottawa and found out that the government was looking for this RFI. And he said, I think you guys should go for it. And we went for it. And the RFP came out and we went for that. And then we have to give Jesse his flowers, our CEO, Jesse Sharrett, because he had to be 3 to 6 months straight of just responding to that RFP. And we were lucky enough to win it.
Okay. That's huge. So when the government pays out like that, do they give tranches, or is it like you get this whole windfall check?
Yeah, that's what a lot of people think, right? Like we
won
this contract.
You hit refresh on your phone.
Yeah.
Says,
all of a sudden, the bank guys are calling, going, "Hey, can we talk to you by private? You ready for private banking?"
Yeah,
didn't happen like that.
Okay.
Doesn't happen like that.
Okay, how does it happen?
So there are different types of government contracts. This happens to be one of the contracts where, as a taxpayer, you should be happy, because really the government is probably being the most methodical and intentional about how they spend money. And it is based on the locations that we open and we roll out for them. Now, everything that we're doing makes a lot of sense for the government. It makes sense to have a third location that's in between their destination office. It makes sense to be close to where people live. But this contract allows them to have this money sitting there and deploy it as they need it. I wish it was the contract where they just cut the check, but it isn't.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, I think. I think that it keeps us accountable to the process, and it allows us to really just focus on creating this really great experience, because if we're successful with our experience, the government will and should be looking at it and saying, this makes a lot of sense as a bigger rollout. And the taxpayer should be happy because they haven't signed a 15-year lease and been committed to the funds when no one's going into the office.
Sure.
Kudos to the government.
Shout out to the government. You got to shout out the government. You
got to shout out
when
the
government. When they
government.
give you a $12 million check plus tax, you got to shout them out.
I know.
For sure. Okay. Man, that's very interesting. How does that affect like the people around you, and like your overall mind state when you get such a windfall? Does your mind state change per se?
You know what? Okay. And this is probably coming from, if you were to talk to Jesse or our CEO, or if you were to talk to many people on my team, they'd probably say, hey, Graham, why don't you just celebrate a win once in a while, right? I think that as entrepreneurs, it's very difficult and sometimes to understand, like sometimes the wins and the hits weigh the same.
What?
Right?
Yeah, sometimes,
right?
Yeah.
And so something like this can happen, and you've always kind of like been thinking about when the hit was going to come right after. So even though it happened and you celebrate, you're like, oh, this is amazing. Already in your mind, you're like, okay, so where are the challenges in this going to be?
Yeah.
And so sometimes you don't have a chance to celebrate it.
Yeah.
I think that was a very real occurrence with this. So to answer your question, it probably didn't change the mindset much. It just was like, okay, so what next? We got to get it open. We got to get one location. We got to get the next one, the next one, the next one.
Do you struggle with celebrating wins?
100%. Yeah, 100%. And it's something that my friends have called me on. People that are very close to me when we're having conversations. Sometimes it's hard to even think about the fact that we've been doing this for 8 years. The fact that we opened our first location with the government. The fact that we have companies and people who are saying this is a great experience for how we work. And, you're still sort of saying, okay, that's good. Like we can do more. So to answer your question, absolutely yes.
I'm right there with you.
Are you?
Man, last year we had our first live event. And honestly, with the podcast, it is, the fact that you're uploading every week, you get hit down so much because you're uploading so constantly. You're always taking swings.
Right.
So by the time you have something successful, it's unfamiliar. It's like, what is this person? I've never met this person before.
Right.
Because you've been taking so many swings.
Right.
Not many people see the swings.
That's right.
But you're taking them.
You're
and
taking
mentally,
them,
you're feeling it the entire time.
Absolutely.
So when something finally hits, and our event was a success, we had it sponsored by Indochino, and had like Shea Moisture sponsor it, and it was a packed event. Everything went well.
Right.
And we're like, wow, that was a success. But celebrating it, everyone was like, why aren't you celebrating? What's going on? And I'm like, honestly, this is just unfamiliar.
Right. It's new territory.
Yeah.
Right. And the new territory is something that I think when you head out on your entrepreneurial journey, you can say, you can tag certain milestones. You can say, like we'll hit 1 million, or we'll hit, whatever that number is. But when you get there, it is so unfamiliar because it was more the idea of it. And then as you're executing and getting there, that's something that you've got to reconcile.
Yeah. And do you find yourself getting small wins and be like, okay, let me take solace in that? Or are you more so just like headstrong and just getting used to the punches?
Now that this is my third business, I'm probably used to the punches more than anything. But what is amazing about wrapping an incredible team of individuals and humans who believe in the vision, support the vision, show up every day to fulfill whatever role they've committed to. My team, they remind me, and I see it in them because they celebrate the wins, and you kind of realize that you have a lot to learn from other people too. So I'm learning, and I'm making conscious effort to celebrate the wins more and more if I can, and you have to, because there really is no peace in the other way.
That's the thing, finding peace within the chaos. I was talking to somebody, a pastor actually, and he was talking about getting uncomfortable. Right? And I was like, listen, as an entrepreneur, I'm always uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is the current state that we kind of stay in.
Right.
Are you finding your way to being comfortable, or are you still like, I'm in chaos and I'm just, I guess, saying I'm within it?
So I would say that would have been the case right up until maybe the end of 2024. And, someone close to me asked, I was, you kind of get to this point where you say, well, why am I doing this? Like, what is this for? Because, if it's not for, I mean, obviously as a business, you're chasing profit, you're chasing, a return for your investors, you're chasing a lot of things, but those are external things. And if you're on your third business and you still don't know your why, then you've got to do that work. And I think I'm at the point in my life where I just sort of said, okay, listen, like I've given a ton of years to doing stuff, and I got to maybe just get even with why. And so someone very close to me asked that question, and I didn't quite have the answer right away. They said, so why are you doing? Like, what do you want out of it? Not why, but what do you want out of it? And I couldn't quite answer. And I won't go into the detail, but basically I know the day, I know the moment where I said, oh my gosh, okay, I got it. And it was December 9th of 2024. I'd gone for a walk and I was just standing there. And I realized that all of the businesses that I had done, everything that I had been doing in life, whether it was creative with the clothing store, whether it was the advertising and the strategy and the advertising, it was about creating to connect. Like, how do we have good conversation because of what I've done, right? How do I meet really great people? And I've met some fantastic people through the years. I've met, people that are still close friends from the clothing store D-Train that I started when I was 21, right? And so I realized I was just always chasing, how do you connect with people in a real way? And that's what LAUFT does for me, right? So I have a great team around me. And that's helped me, towards the first half of this year to sort of recalibrate and say, well, listen, like all of this means nothing if I'm not valuing the connections that I'm making. So today, as an example, we meet, and I'm hoping that we'll have great conversations in the future, and that will be a result of LAUFT. And that's a different perspective, and that's my why now. Like, this is what I want out of LAUFT, is how do you connect with people?
I relate to that a lot. And I think that's kind of why I started the podcast, because even before this, I had a blog and I was doing interview questions a lot too. And the ability to connect on an organic level, it means so much.
Absolutely.
Being able to look at somebody eye to eye versus like any other level, it makes a huge difference, especially when you're
It's everything.
building like a proper relationship. So where do you see LAUFT going into the future?
I believe that LAUFT is the future of how people will work. I mean, I think that, technology allows people to be more creative than they ever could be. It allows them access, and you and I were talking about this, to test, to break things, to just do things that were cost prohibitive. And I think that space will always be necessary for people to connect. And so if LAUFT can be that place for people to create, collaborate, and work to push the boundaries and the limits of whatever idea they have in their head, I think that's what LAUFT will be. And I think when you see a LAUFT in airports, when you see LAUFTs in hotels, hospitals, I'd love, we have this vision of LAUFTs in hospitals so that you could be close to your loved one and then also be able to check in with work so that you can really do it in a way that's meaningful. I think LAUFTs will be everywhere. We will be the Starbucks of workspace with an Uber-like experience.
No, I love that. Now, you mentioned that this has been at the top forefront of my mind, that you originally got the 13 million, 12 million, 13 million on 2022, and you then executed out in 2025.
Yes.
Some of the 3-year process.
Absolutely.
What was some of the things that were the ups and downs during the 3-year process for you?
Getting there. I mean, think about this. Before a $13 million, you are building a business in the GTA. You are carrying teams. You're carrying your team. You're carrying product development. You're carrying operational expenses. You're carrying everything to build a network with this potential for the stability and the movement of the needle that the government will bring. It's almost like having two separate businesses because you're waiting for one, which is it's government. It's different. And then you also have your existing day-to-day business, and you still got to maintain that while getting prepped for the government. And so the biggest challenge was September the 21st, 2022. We were told that, hey, get ready. You might be starting this fall. So you ramp up for that. And then for no one, and this is no fault of anyone, right? This is just how things roll out. It took 2 years. And so you still have to make it 2 years to be ready to open up a location for the government. And that means funding. That means everything that you need to survive. And that's not easy.
Oh, so you're saying it took 2 years for the first check to come?
You have to open a location.
Oh.
You see, so to answer your question from before, there are a couple of different contracts, right? Like one contract could be, hey, you got it, and you're giving us this good today, these goods and services today, and here's your check because you gave it to us.
Yeah.
If for whatever reason there's, for whether it's bureaucracy, whether it's, just the process, they don't tell you where the first location is and you haven't opened it, then you don't get paid. Right?
Yeah.
Because you haven't given anything.
Yeah.
Right? And that makes sense. Right? Like why should anyone give you something and then say,
no
hey, I'll get back to you in 2 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's a reality that we had to deal with. And I think as challenging as that was, I would bet that if you were to poll our team and even our Jesse or Justine or anyone on our team who was there when we won it and to get here today, I think most of us would say that we're in a better position and we have learned so much in that waiting period that we were ready for when we opened it. Does that make sense? Operationally, we were better. We were leaner. We had refined our platform. Like we doubled down because we knew it was coming, and we put all that effort and time that we were waiting into saying, okay, how can we have a product that's going to be ready to do this in a big way? And so, hard, yes, but I think in the end we won. Like we came out stronger for it.
100%. 100%. Is LAUFT incorporating any AI into this business?
Yeah, it's a topic of conversation every day because the reality is, I think there are a lot of people who, and it's such a big topic, right? There are a lot of people who may have a job and the thing they would want to do is ignore the fact that AI is going to be carry significant impact across many industries. As a business, we realize that LAUFT is fundamentally an option, and the majority of our clients are knowledge workers. AI will be impacting knowledge workers. However, AI also opens up opportunities for a startup to be leaner, right? So instead of having 15 people, you only need possibly, 5 people. And those 5 people are going to need a space to work, and they may not want a static office that they've signed a 12-month lease on. So there is an opportunity for LAUFT to be there to service that. In addition to that, it's made us rethink how we build our tech stack because there is a tech component of LAUFT. So the fact that you can go into a LAUFT and you can rent by the hour, by the day, you can work at any loft that you want. You really have that flexibility. You can buy bundles. You can, I can go down the list, right, of all the things that we've done to say, how do we create bundles and packages that make sense for the customer today? You can't help but wonder, how can we make this more seamless? How can we leverage AI to, whether or not it's a booking agent on our end who's talking to the booking agent from the client's end, a company, and they're just looking for the company that can facilitate it in the fastest, most efficient way. So we need to integrate AI into our tech stack. When we were having a conversation the other day, the position and at least what my belief is that we were always a work experience company, and we always focused on when people came in, what services could we give them? How could we complement the work experience that they have? If our team, people on the front lines and people who are answering calls or responding to emails, if they can leverage AI and say, okay, the things that I was just doing an input or an output, right? Like these simple things. If I can offload that and automate that, and then I can take the bulk of my time to focus on the experience and deal with the client directly, what would that mean for LAUFT as an experience company? What would it mean for our clients when they come into a location and, our team is extremely present, because they care about, what experience you have. So to answer your question, AI will be part of our move forward. It has to be. And I think because we are focused on the experience, AI can also help us, because we do have companies that have approached us about our software and they've said, can you give us the LAUFT experience for our workers? Because we may not need your space, but we do need, like, what you guys are doing from an experience standpoint matters, because you guys aren't just operators. So yes, AI is definitely part of the conversation. It's been something that I've been down the rabbit hole for the last month, and working on my own AI agents and stuff to say, hey, can someone manage my inbox? Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Awesome, man. And I'm so curious too. What's the marketing strategy for LAUFT? Are you guys running Google ads, Facebook ads? I'm a marketer by trade.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm like, I was so curious. Is like, what's been like the growth strategy that's been working?
So again, we're a lean startup, and coming from advertising, and Jesse, our CEO, has been pushing. Like, we've just never had this dedicated marketing budget, believe it or not. Everything's been very organic. It also helps that we happen to be in a space where if you're doing stuff on LinkedIn, if you're doing stuff for business, that tends to be business. We lucked out that one platform just happened to really key in on companies and individuals who are like, I'm professional, and if I'm professional, I should pay for space. So LinkedIn has been a huge part of our strategy. And I guess the second thing would be, as we move forward with the government and we have more revenue, whether or not it would be traditional marketing strategies now, because I do believe that even AI will impact that industry in a way that,
For sure.
we haven't seen.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends reaching out to me from the industry who are saying, hey, have you seen VO3?
Yeah.
Right. So
it's insanity. I'm happy I'm kind of pivoting out of it, because it's like, it's not looking the best for them.
Well, a business like yours, like where it's building a brand, like that matters more today than anything. I mean,
sure.
Authenticity really cuts through.
100%. The brand, as well as the pattern, like the consumer habits, is most important. Because I'm finding that even for myself, I'm getting AI fatigue. And I think we're going to get to a space where there cannot be 17 AI platforms that people are using on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
It's going to consolidate into 2 or 3, and that's it. Because we have mind share that only a few people can withhold.
Right.
We have mind share that we're going to go to 1 or 2 or 3 apps, and we're like, all right, I'm done. And I think ChatGPT is winning that. Google VO is coming close to that. But I'm not sure if like the Claudes, the Llamas, I'm not sure if they're going to have that customer base unless they really pull something out of a hat.
And you're probably right. There will be consolidation. I think in a lot of industries, you normally have, the opportunity, and so many companies rush out, and then there's always consolidation. So maybe, yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, man. Where can people find you?
LAUFT Workspace on Instagram, LAUFT Workspace on LinkedIn, LAUFT Workspace everywhere on socials. You won't find me on social except on LinkedIn.
Amazing. With that being said, hustle what you can control. So control your grind, I control your life. I'm Alex.
I'm Graham.
That's the show, y'all. Peace.